Shravanam Diaries podcast.
So before we would begin today's episode, I would like to give or point out the second, marriage realization I've had. If the lady has a big false ego, it's better to find her a husband who has a bigger false ego, or at least the same. Equal should be better. That would be compatible, kind of like complementary counterparts, that he and her, they would be matching. Because otherwise it will be like she will just twist him into a horn of a sheep, just like they say in Russian, скрутить мужика в бараний рог, which literally means turning into it's worse than handpicked husband. He's just pleasing the wife. But if the lady is able to just completely twist the man into a horn of a sheep, then how can she feel protected? How can she feel that he will take care of her? And if she will be in danger, that he will be there to stand up and fight and so like that. This will be my second marriage advice or marriage realization I've had in the past 5 years. I'm sure, I hope that there will be more and more of these, but Jay. So yes, let's just come back to Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, chapter 10, the opulence of the absolute. Text. Which text is it? Is it text 16, isn't it? No, it's text 15. Let's read. Svayamevātmanātmānam vyetatvam purushottama bhuta bhavana bhutesha deva deva jagatpate. Indeed, you alone know yourself by your own internal potency, O Supreme Person, origin of all, Lord of all beings, God of all gods. God of gods, Lord of the universe. So Deva Deva, word for word, gives O Lord of all demigods. Lord of the universe, Jagat Pate. Okay, purport. The Supreme Lord Krishna can be known by persons who are in a relationship with him through the discharge of devotional service, like Arjuna and his followers. Persons of demonic and or atheistic mentality cannot know Krishna. Mental speculation that leads one away from the Supreme Lord is a serious sin, and one who does not know Krishna should not try to comment on Bhagavad Gita. This is very interesting that mental speculation looks very innocent and looks very harmless, isn't it? But here Prabhupada says it's a serious sin, and I've seen so many times that people they comment on Bhagavad Gita, they comment on Krishna, they comment on Krishna's pure devotees in their mental speculation, and they think that they're allowed, that they're entitled, that there's no repercussions, no consequences, that they have full right, and basically they have the audacity to comment on Bhagavad Gita, on Krishna and his associates. But mental speculation is a serious sin, and let us read further to understand the gravity of the situation. Bhagavad Gita is the statement of Krishna, and since it is the science of Krishna, it should be understood from Krishna as Arjuna understood it. It should not be received from atheistic persons. Now, please, I'm requesting everybody present, or I am trying to convince myself, of course, is that when Prabhupada speaks about demonic or atheistic mentality, we should understand it to be applicable to ourselves. Because I know I'm not a pure devotee. But if I'm not a pure devotee, that means that there is some demoniac or atheistic mentality within me. And if I'm scared to acknowledge that there is like 99% of it, at least I can acknowledge that at least 1% is there. So this is applicable to me. That means that I do have this sin of mental speculation and I have to work on myself. Let's read further. It should not be received from atheistic persons, so I can't give my own interpretations of Bhagavad Gita. I have to stick to Srila Prabhupada, to my spiritual masters, and I have to receive it in that light. Okay, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.11, Vadanti tattatva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. The Supreme Truth is realized in three aspects as impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and at last as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, at the last stage of understanding the Absolute Truth, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A common man, or even a liberated man, who has realized the impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma, may not understand God's personality. Such men, therefore, may endeavor to understand the Supreme Person from the verses of Bhagavad Gita, which are being spoken by this person, Krishna. Sometimes the impersonalists accept Krishna as Bhagavan, or they accept his authority. Yet, many liberated persons cannot understand Krishna as Purushottama, the Supreme Person. So this is exactly how Arjuna addressed, right? Okay, reading. Therefore, Arjuna addresses him as Purushottama. Purushottama. Purusha, right? Person. A man. Uttama. Supreme. Supreme man. Supreme person. Purushottama. Yet one still may not understand that Krishna is the father of all living entities. Therefore, Arjuna addresses him as Bhuta Bhavana. And if, this is right, Bhuta Bhavana, he is the father. I'm reading this book by Sukavaha Mataji. Sukavaha Mataji is this great, wonderful Mataji who wrote the book Entering the Gap, Part 1, Part 2. They just released like a couple of weeks ago, I think. And she opened up this book by a letter from her father. And I was reading that letter and I became so like my heart was moved so much. Like I just felt so inspired, and I became more appreciative of my own father actually after that. And I wrote to him and I shared it with my parents, and really, like, understanding that father figure, like, I know that not many people in this world, in this age of Kali, they have the father figure in their life. But the father figure, those who do have a strong, loving, protecting and caring father figure, they know how wonderful it is. And imagine, Krishna is that the supreme father of all living entities, right? Okay, reading further. And if one comes to know him as the father of all the living entities, still one may not know him as the supreme controller of everyone. As the supreme controller. Therefore he is addressed as Bhutesha, the supreme controller of everyone. So we may not know him as the supreme controller, and therefore he is Bhutesha, supreme controller of everyone. And even if one knows Krishna as the supreme controller of all living entities, still one may not know that he is origin of all the demigods. Therefore he is addressed herein as Deva Deva, the worshipful god of all demigods. So Bhutesha, this is a very interesting name. Actually, all the names of the Lord are very, very wonderful. And like a couple of years back, I remember Abhigya. I was like, the Lord is Abhigya, right? There's Sarvagya, there's Abhigya. He knows everything. Supremely cognizant. And here it's called Bhutesha. Of course, we know Ishvara, right? Ishvara is the proprietor of everything, right? But here it says the controller of everyone. So when we speak about somebody controlling somebody else, usually we get a little frightened. We're like, oh, because we feel we have independence, we have free will, we have, all of this. And that's why when we find out that somebody can control somebody else. But it's, of course, there is free will and everything. But just like we read previously in Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna gives that inspiration. Somebody wants to worship demigods, Krishna is like, okay, and he is inspiring the consciousness of that person, right? So he has control over everyone. Just like even like the wives have control over their husbands to some extent, and to some extent the husband can have some control over his wife or his children. But Krishna, he is in control of everyone, right? So, and he is the origin of all demigods. Demigods are in charge of this material manifestation. He is the origin. He is the Lord. Next, and even if one knows him as the worshipful God of all demigods, one may not know him that he is the supreme proprietor of everything. Therefore, he is addressed as Jagatpati. Here it is. Thus, the truth about Krishna is established in this verse by the realization of Arjuna. And we should follow in the footsteps of Arjuna to understand Krishna as he is. Text 16. So, understanding Krishna as he is, that's what we need to do, and that's why we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna and our previous acharyas. Text 16. Vaktum arhasya sheishena divyahyatma vibhutaya yabhir vibhutibhir lokan imamstvam vyapyatishtasi. Please tell me in detail of your divine opulences, by which you pervade all these worlds. Purport. In this verse, it appears that Arjuna is already satisfied with his understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. By Krishna's grace, Arjuna has personal experience, intelligence, and knowledge, and whatever else a person may have. And through all these agencies, he has understood Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For him there is no doubt, yet he is asking Krishna to explain his all-pervading nature. People in general, and the impersonalists in particular, concern themselves mainly with all the pervading nature of the Supreme. Right? So Arjuna is asking Krishna how he exists in his all-pervading aspect through his different agencies. Through his different energies. One should know that this is being asked by Arjuna on behalf of the common people. Okay, this is understood. Text number 17. Katham vidyam aham yogims tvam sada parichintayan keshu keshu cha bhaveshu chintyosi bhagavan maya. O Krishna, O Supreme Mystic, how shall I constantly think of you? And how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered, O Supreme Personality of Godhead? Purport. As it is stated in the previous chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is covered by his Yoga Maya. Only surrendered souls and devotees can see him. Now, Arjuna is convinced that his friend Krishna is the Supreme Godhead, but he wants to know the general process by which the all-pervading God should be understood by the common man. Common man, including the demons and atheists, cannot know Krishna because he is guarded by his yoga maya energy. Again, these questions are asked by Arjuna for their benefit. Their superior devotee is concerned not only for his own understanding, but for the understanding of all mankind. So Arjuna, out of his mercy, because he is a Vaishnava, a devotee, is opening for the common man the understanding of the all-pervasiveness of the Supreme Lord. He addresses Krishna specifically as Yogin, because Shri Krishna is the master of the Yoga Maya energy, by which he is covered and uncovered to the common man. The common man who has no love for Krishna cannot always think of Krishna, therefore he has to think materially. Arjuna is considering the mode of thinking of the materialistic persons of this world. The words keshu keshu, chabhavishu refer to material nature. The word bhava means physical things. Because materialists cannot understand Krishna spiritually, they are advised to concentrate the mind on physical things and try to see how Krishna is manifested by physical representations. So, right, as Srila Prabhupada says here, common man, he has no love for Krishna. He has to think materially. So, just like His Grace Pankajangri Prabhu would say, you either have it or you don't. Love of Godhead is like that. You don't have to you speculate, am I already super advanced, or like how advanced am I, and this and that, my level, this and that. You either have it or you don't. If you have to think about it, you have to think about Krishna. You don't have love of Godhead. You are thinking materially, means you have that mentality within you, and that's why this chapter is very, very important for us. Text 18. Vistarenatmano yogam vibhutim cha janardana bhuyah kathaya triptirhi shrinvato nasti me mritam. O Janardana, again, please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. Nectar. Purport. A similar statement was made to Sutta Goswami by the rishis of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka. That statement is Vayam tu na vitripyamam uttama shloka vikrame yachrinvatam rasagyanam svadu svadu padei padei. Quote, one can never be satiated even though one continuously hears the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, who is glorified by excellent prayers. Jai. Those who have entered into a transcendental relationship with Krishna relish at every step. Do you relish Krishna, like relationship with Krishna at every step? Every step. So those who have entered into a transcendental relationship with Krishna relish at every step the descriptions of the pastimes of the Lord. Unquote. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.19. Do we relish pastimes of the Lord, or do we relish the junk of the trash and gossip of this material world? We all have to ask ourselves this very, very simple, very, very straightforward question. Thus, Arjuna is interested. Wow, right? What is interesting for Arjuna? Let's read again. Interested. Interested. Thus, Arjuna is interested. He is interested in hearing about Krishna. That's what he's interested in. And specifically, how he remains as the all-pervading Supreme Lord. Thus, Arjuna is interested in hearing about Krishna, and specifically how he remains as the all-pervading Supreme Lord. Now, as far as Amritam, nectar, is concerned, any narration or statement concerning Krishna is just like nectar. And this nectar can be perceived by practical experience. Modern stories, fiction, and histories are different from the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, in that one will tire of hearing mundane stories, but one will never. One never tires of hearing about Krishna. It is for this reason only that the history of the whole universe is replete with references to the pastimes of the incarnations of Godhead. The Puranas are histories of bygone ages that relate the pastimes of the various incarnations of the Lord. In this way, the reading matter remains forever fresh, despite repeated readings. Isn't this wonderful? Like, you read Bhagavad Gita, you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's ever fresh, always new. Like, you can try reading Harry Potter or Twilight or whatever nonsense I want to say, whatever like mundane, popular, I don't know, what was that? Like all of these, like I don't even know what do people read these days, but you can read it once, you can read it twice, you may read it 3 times. Oh my God, some freak, psychopaths may read it for the 4th time, but you can't read it over and over again, because you will be bored, and then it will be like But Bhagavad Gita, you can read it 1,000,000 times, you can read it 1,000,000,000 times, and it will always be so damn interesting. Damn good. I really like Prema Rupa Hare Krishna. Okay, damn good. Alright, text 19. Now, Arjuna expressed his interest, right? He said, "Oh Janardana, I'm interested in the nectar. And then what does Krishna say? Krishna, he is reciprocating. Let's see how Krishna reciprocates. Text 19. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Hantate Kathayishyami Divya Hyatma Vibhutaya Pradhanyata Kuru Shreshta Nasyanto Vistarasya Me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Yes, I will tell you of my splendorous manifestations, but only of those which are prominent, O Arjuna, for my opulence is limitless. Have you ever had a friend who is so humble? You ask him, can you please tell me your magnificent opulences? He's like, sure, my opulences are limitless. He's like, wow, thank you. Krishna is very humble. We have to understand that. Don't take it in the wrong way, okay? Krishna is very humble and detached, but he has to speak objectively. He's being objective. He's like, my opulences are limitless. You want to hear the purport to this wonderful verse? We'll read it tomorrow. I'm joking. We'll read it right now. Purport. It is not possible to comprehend the greatness of Krishna and his opulences. The senses of the individual soul are limited and do not permit him to understand the totality of Krishna's affairs. Still, the devotees try to understand. They try to understand Krishna, but not on the principle that they will be able to understand Krishna fully at any specific time or in any state of life. Rather, the very topics of Krishna are so relishable that they appear to the devotees as nectar. Thus the devotees enjoy them. In discussing Krishna's opulences and his diverse energies, the pure devotees take transcendental pleasure. Therefore, they want to hear and discuss them. So see, if you have this higher taste, my microphone fell down. If you have higher taste and you have that transcendental pleasure, then you know that you hear and you discuss Krishna's pastimes and his opulences. If you don't have that taste, you won't discuss Krishna's pastimes and opulences. You will discuss something else, something material, something yucky. Okay. Maybe it won't be yucky, maybe it won't be something materially beautiful, but material beauty ends sooner or later, isn't it? If it won't end in 100 years, it will end at the fire of the pralaya. So, okay. Thus the devotees enjoy them. In discussing Krishna's opulences and his diverse energies, the pure devotees take transcendental pleasure. Therefore, they want to hear and discuss them. Krishna knows that living entities do not understand the extent of his opulences. He therefore agrees to state only the principal manifestations of his diverse, of his different energies. The word pradha nyataha, principle, is very important because we can understand only a few of the principal details of the Supreme Lord. For his features are unlimited. It is not possible to understand them all. And vibhuti, as used in this verse, refers to the opulences by which he controls the whole manifestation. In the Amarakosha dictionary, it is stated that vibhuti indicates an exceptional opulence. The impersonalist or pantheist cannot understand the exceptional opulences of the Supreme Lord, nor the manifestations of his divine energies. So this chapter is very important for the devotees and for basically proving the pantheists and impersonalists wrong. This chapter, one of my favorite chapters. So, nor the manifestations of his divine energies. Both in the material world and in the spiritual world, his energies are distributed in every variety of manifestation. Now, Krishna is describing what can be directly perceived by the common man. Thus, part of his variegated energy is described in this way. So interesting, right? He describes something that the common man can understand, but impersonalists and pantheists who are supposedly so advanced, they have such high false ego that it's like, going above the roof. But they can't understand this pastime, even though common men can understand. Text 20. Aham atma gudakesha sarva bhutashaya sthitah aham adishcha madhyam cha bhutanam anta eva cha. I am the super soul, O Arjuna. Seated in the hearts of all living entities, I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Purport. In this verse, Arjuna is addressed as Gudakesha, which means one who has conquered the darkness of sleep. For those who are sleeping in the darkness of ignorance, it is not possible to understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself in various ways in the material and in the spiritual worlds. Thus, this address by Krishna to Arjuna is significant. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The book links, previous episodes timeline, and biography of the author can be found on shravanamdiaries.com. The link is in the description, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare